Hello, I'm talking about hypermobility today. My name is Allison. I just put a 20-minute practice up and referenced hypermobility, so I thought I would address what it is, what it's not, and how we can learn a little bit more about it and then protect ourselves, protect people from injury. So if you're an athlete, if you're a yoga teacher, like a yoga instructor, a Pilates instructor, or if you're someone who thinks you might have hypermobility or you have joint pain, this conversation is for you. So let's huddle up. What I'm drawing, I'm going to draw a protein molecule. And I know that, most of the time we don't just sit around drawing protein molecules, but I'm going to show you kind of what one looks like. It is it's like this kind of like this rectangle shape, and it has these little things sticking out of it. And you might think about like, oh, a Lego, they have those little things where you can kind of stick them together and they stick up, kind of looks a little bit like that, right? And so you have these prongs sticking up, and below, I'm going to show one next to it that might be similar to a hypermobile protein molecule. Yeah, probably don't want to see the top of my head. But the prongs are way less. So let's see that. So they don't stick up quite as much. So if you imagine that we might have like protein molecules that are kind of rubbing together, and the prongs, if they stick up a little bit more, will catch, and if the prongs don't catch each other, there's more like slidability. If that's a word, it is now. So they're gonna slide on each other a little bit more, which is gonna allow the body to get into these beautiful positions. And the reason why I'm talking about athletes, and in particular like yoga instructors, Pilates instructors, and people who, you can just like take your leg and you might be able to just put your leg behind your head, like not a problem. It's just easy for you. You don't have to do a whole lot of strength work to get there. And sometimes that can result in pain, or maybe you do have pain and you are relating to this because you're like, oh yeah, I can just do this crazy thing with my arm and it's not a problem, but now my shoulder hurts. So hypermobility is where the collagen molecules don't process quite like most people's. Now, if you look out in like the world, society, the recorded data that we have is saying that about 10% of our population deals with hypermobility. And those are the ones that are reported, but I'm gonna guess that there are probably a lot of unreported cases of this, and people in pain who haven't seen a doctor. There's no data there. So it may be somewhere above that. But when you look in Pilates and yoga communities, the percentages go up. And the reason why is because when you do things like this, you feel really successful. You go to class and you feel like you walk out and you're like, oh man, I just won that class. And so you get all this dopamine and these really good feeling chemicals in your bloodstream. So it's going to make you want to go back. So when you start looking in those communities, the data says that the percentages are more along the lines of 25% of people, which is a huge chunk of people. If you think about what 25% is, that's 1 in 4 people have hypermobility. And so I believe that, informing ourselves as just people in the world, as especially if you're some kind of therapist, a yoga teacher, or an athlete, this is something to really be a little bit more aware of, because you might have yourself or friends who deal with this. And so, well, what are some of the things that we can do? So I'm going to just touch on this just really lightly. But what are some of the things that we can do? So in our last practice, what we did is that we were in, this kind of position where we were doing some hip opening and some spine opening. And I said, take your thigh and pull it in towards the hip socket. And that's gonna allow for a little less, you're not gonna pull your ligaments away from your joint. You're going to protect your ligaments. Now this is an instruction I give to everybody, regardless if they have hypermobility or not, because it does protect the joints so well. And you can also get a little bit of muscular activity, which is therefore going to support the stretch, because if you think about what hypermobility, what's happening is there's a stretch, but there's not enough strength to support the stretch. So every time you do a stretch, you want to have the strength that supports the stretch. So let's say you go into just something simple. Let's do a seated forward fold. And you're trying to reach your legs as far as you can, and then you're trying to reach your head as far as you can. You're going to get a ton of pull, but if you have hypermobility, in the long run, that's going to create pain. Or it has let's say it's not going to, but it has the ability to create pain. So where we want to help support ourselves is by pulling the thigh bones in so that you can sit up taller. And really this position is about lengthening the spine. So we're not trying to get the head to the knees. We're trying to get the spine long, long, long. So you're really trying to, if you have a string connected to my heart and you're pulling me forward, that's the thing that you want to kind of get. And it doesn't mean that you go down toward the floor. I go down toward the floor because once I reach out far enough, the only place further is down. But really what I'm looking for is this way, more than down toward the floor anyway. And by pulling these thighs in and then engaging up here, if you can pull your thighs in and then flex your feet, you can feel your very upper quad. If you put your hands right here, you feel your very upper quadriceps engage. And so that's gonna protect the ligaments a little bit better than if you didn't do that. And the other thing that I want to tell you about hypermobility is that when you are doing something like yoga or Pilates or stretching or anything physical, what you want to do is don't stretch to 100%. Just don't stretch to 100%. And always, if you do a stretch, make sure you do a strengthening exercise for that area of the body first, a strengthening exercise, and then followed by a stretch. But let's talk about there are two, let's kind of divide this, and you could probably make more than two categories, but let's, for the sake of this conversation, put a stretch into two categories. So there's a passive stretch, and a passive stretch is like, again, I'll come here and just like extend my leg out and then let my body come over to the side, and I'm just gonna hang. And so a tensile stretch is where you're creating tension. So you can do that by doing something different. If I'm in this position, I could, to create tension, stand on my leg to create the stretch. That's a tensile stretch. Or I could engage the muscles, pull the thigh in, engage the muscles, and create a little bit of tension here so that I'm not going to just plop into or flop into my mobility. I'm going to protect my joints. And really that's what it's all about, because the pain that people experience who have this condition experience joint pain more than anything else. So here are the highlights. Okay, hypermobility is something that we can deal with. It affects approximately, the data is now saying 10% of the population. Again, that's 1 in 10 people. So that is actually a big number of people. So I feel like it should even be a bigger conversation. And then we want to protect the joints by doing strength before stretching, and then not stretching to 100%. And then when you do stretch, consider going into a tensile stretch rather than a passive stretch, so that you protect the joint better. And there's some strength aspect to those as well. while doing the stretch, so it's going to keep you much safer. Again, my name is Allison. Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned by hitting that subscribe button, and I will see you very soon. Until then, take care.